Today's video is sponsored by Skillshare. I'll tell you a lot more about it if you stick around till the end. I loved this generation's reboot of Doom. It was one of the most unique, fast-paced, frenetic FPS games I have ever gotten my hands on. I also felt when I finished it that it didn't need a sequel, that this should exist as is, and that Bethesda as a publisher can maybe move on. Let it ride into the sunset. That wasn't because I didn't like the game, obviously. It was simply because I felt like they had did it. They had made an excellent FPS, and it didn't need to be franchised or turned into something else. Because when that happens, oftentimes, the quality deteriorates. You lose the magic you once had. So when I finally got my hands on Doom Eternal, my expectations were measured. I wasn't expecting the greatest FPS of all time. In fact, I was expecting something that wasn't quite as crazy or enjoyable as what I had gotten my hands on just a few years prior. Turns out my expectations and where they were at happened to be a good thing. Not because the game was bad, but instead because I kind of got to experience that magic all over again. As always, to avoid spoilers, of which there really aren't that many here, I'll keep my gameplay to the first couple hours, and it starts from the moment you turn the game on. A little anecdote, Doom Eternal has been one of the strangest games I've ever started on my PC. Sure, you have your low, medium, and high graphic settings, but you've also got your nightmare settings? That's right, nightmare graphic settings. And while that's novel to read, it doesn't matter all that much. By the way, I am playing on one of the nightmare settings, but no matter what system you play Doom Eternal on PC, PS4, Xbox One, it is an absolute feast for the eyes. This game creates and consistently nails its atmosphere better than nearly any game on the market. This looks, feels, and sounds like the underworld. As metal pumps through your speakers, you realize really quickly that not only is this game surprisingly colorful, with its orange iridescent flames being offset by blues, purples, pinks, but it's the particle effects and blood that really catch your eye. Fire looks dangerous, it looks real, which is good because you'll see a lot of it. But it's when you get close that things really get interesting. Innards splatter out of heads and limbs, body parts crumble to the floor, and enemies look like near photorealistic versions of your worst nightmares. If you were to take a melee kill and slow it down like this, you'd see some of the best graphics and effects work you'll see this year. But if you pan out, you're getting this atmosphere shoved down your throat in all the right ways. The backdrops of these levels feature massive demons roaming in shackles in the background, huge Slayer statues, and brimstone backdrops that all add to a scope and grandeur that makes this place you're in feel truly inescapable, as I guess it should. There are moments where it's hard not to stop and take in your surroundings, and it's almost always worth it, even if it costs you a life. This could be, or could have been, a very dark, cut-and-paste world, a simple clone of the last Doom game, which was great in its own right, but it is oozing with creativity and attention to detail that is difficult not to drool over. But once you start playing, you get a deeper experience than what you might expect from the game's marketing material. RPG elements aren't entirely new to Doom, but I think this game is at its most nuanced and interesting when it's letting you play it your way. There is a relatively large suite of RPG systems hidden in Doom Eternal that aren't necessarily always pertinent to your progression, but make the game so much more rewarding. Each mission has goals. Completing those goals rewards you with weapon points, which lets you upgrade your weapons in meaningful ways, like adding nades to your shotgun or boosting the secondary fire of your rocket launcher. There's also sentinel crystals hidden throughout the levels that will allow you to gain skills and upgrade base stats like health and ammo. On top of those, you have your suit's progression tree with its own set of perk points. And on top of all that, you have ruins that add unique abilities to your Doomslayer. Oh, and that's right, on top of all of that, you have a battery system that upgrades and opens up more of your hub, including a training area called Demon Prison. Yeah, there is a lot to do, a lot to accomplish, and a lot of trees to manage, a lot of perks and stats to build out your playthrough with. What's great about these systems is two things. The first is, Doom makes you earn most of these upgrades, whether it's by hiding them in levels or asking you to complete sometimes difficult secondary tasks. Doom Eternal doesn't make it a habit of handing you things for free after the first couple hours. So, as you get more powerful, you begin to take pride in your build, and you feel as though your progression has been earned. And the second thing is just how meaningful these systems are to the gameplay without becoming a crutch. There's a middle ground between useless, superfluous perk trees that games often present to seem deeper mechanically than they really are, and skill trees that force you to upgrade just to get important gameplay abilities that you should have had from the jump, like sliding or dodging. Doom Eternal finds that middle ground. It seeks it out, and it succeeds. For example, I didn't need the ability to slow down time in midair to land a few extra shots, but it did save my life a couple times. I didn't need 3 missiles attached to my starter assault weapon, but it's fun to use, and that goes for most of the game's RPG trees. They're there to increase the enjoyment of the game, not lock away things you need, or better yet, add marketing material to the back of the box of how it's also an RPG. But where the game really shines, and sometimes falters actually, is in level design. The level design of Doom Eternal is 95% immaculate, a clear culmination of decades of FPS development experience, and 5%, good lord, please get me out of here. The 95% first. Most of Eternal's levels are thoroughly enjoyable, easy to understand, difficult to fully explore, romps through a world you'd never buy a ticket to visit in real life. Levels are relatively straightforward in design. A very reasonable map system makes them even easier to understand, and most consist of small arenas spread out across sections of light platforming. I know you all remember the video of a certain journalist failing to get through a level of Doom Eternal pre-release. I'm here to tell you it's even more ridiculous to watch now. Doom Eternal never really confuses you. Instead, it gives you clearly laid out navigational objectives and tests your twitch skills to get there. At no point should you struggle like you saw in that video. Between a double jump, a dash, and some upgrades, Eternal's platforming is actually kind of fun. Never too hard, always brief, it's way more precise than it looked in that video. And the levels make sure to create reasonable platforming challenges that rarely frustrate while saving the tougher stuff for secret collecting, of which, by the way, there are so many. I mean, there are secrets everywhere, some really hard to find, some easier, but they're all fun to collect. But double jumping into a wall climb, into another jump, into a double dash, into a ledge grab is just as satisfying as it sounds, and also as cool as you think it looks. Even the quote-unquote arena portions of the levels are usually awesome. Jumping ramps, jumping platforms, arm swings, and elevation create for some of the best FPS encounters imaginable. They make the most of Doom's movement suite. And believe it or not, there's real variety in the aesthetic design. You'll go from this to this to this in just the first few hours. But every once in a while, Eternal throws you into levels, or portions of levels, that are just pure frustration. Simply not big enough to allow for movement amongst all the enemies it throws at you, or too big to justify the size of the encounter. There are clear moments of imperfection, but they're found in a sea of level euphoria that more than makes up for it. Except for some Slayer gates. They're hidden combat arenas in some levels. They are brutal, and often have some chaotic level design to boot. Some are really fun, some not so much, they're hit or miss. But before we get to multiplayer, what about the star of the show? If you buy or have bought Doom, it's probably for one thing and one thing only, the gameplay, and it is better than ever. Let's start with the simple. Weaponry is as great as always. Shotguns fire with force and tear apart rotting bodies, RPGs scatter legs and arms across the ground. But it's how you use the game's tools that I think really separates this experience. Eternal is tough. Its enemies are tough, its levels are tough. In one instance, you could have a Mancubus firing rockets at you as demons fire at you from above while grunts close in fast on the ground, or maybe this slithery guy has you cornered. Its weaponry is a chess game, and these are the pieces. This guy here will tear through shields, but is relatively useless against Mancubus, who needs explosives to more quickly tear off his cannons. But maybe it's best if you just throw an ice bomb to freeze him first. The point is, the game is really a fight for survival. It's not necessarily always a power trip. You will switch weapons 4 or 5 times in each encounter, and once again, Doom forces you to play aggressive by rewarding you with health and ammo for melee kills or chainsaw kills. So while its weaponry is the hand you use to move those chess pieces around, its movement mechanics is the mind you need to place the pieces in the right place. Except for marauders. They are shield-toting, axe-wielding enemies who are now more annoying than ever. I will talk about them in my deeper dive video, yet they suck. Movement here is precise. Dodges are necessary, melee kills are quick, jumping and jump shots are also a necessity, and it all feels as smooth as butter. It's like the most gut-wrenching ice skating routine you've ever seen. Easy to pick up, so easy to pick up, gruelingly difficult to master. There's a beautiful skill curve here, but what you're really mastering is the movement. When to dodge, when to jump, when to use a jump pad. And then as you master that, you're slowly combining it with the FPS mechanics you're familiar with in every other game. And once you combine that FPS play with the movement mechanics a few hours in, it feels so satisfying. To kind of tie a bow on this section, Doom Eternal, in my opinion, has some of the best pure gameplay of any FPS in a generation. Whether you enjoy the package it's in is a different story, but this is great gameplay design from start to finish. However, there is one big con, one that probably won't matter to most people. Doom Eternal is a game that people buy for single player. But its developer and publisher made a big deal about how much focus they were putting on the multiplayer mode, how this game was going to be an online game. You can play it single player offline, by the way, but how there were going to be updates and seasonal events, and you could play the multiplayer and make progress to those events in single player and vice versa. And then the game came out, and Doom Eternal's big main multiplayer mode is called Battle Mode. And it's going to be interesting to see what the masses think of it, because not only is it, in my opinion, uninspired, but it also isn't nearly as fun as anything you'll do in its main campaign. Battle Mode is basically a reduction of every Evolve or Dead by Daylight of this past generation, something we keep seeing more and more of. In fact, we're seeing so many versions of Doom Eternal's multiplayer mode, this asymmetrical gameplay, that it's actually getting a bit fatiguing. It's a 2v1 game mode where 2 people play as one of 5 demons and the other person plays as a slayer. Sound like any other games you played recently? Yeah, probably. And essentially the goal is to kill the other team. The 2 demons want to kill the slayer wants to kill the 2 demons. Levels here aren't perfect to start. In fact, they're sometimes not at all fun to navigate as some of the demons, but worse yet, it doesn't feel balanced. I've yet to play a single game where the Slayer has actually won. Now, your mileage may vary on that. It may be your first game where the Slayer comes home with a victory. But I, in fact, have only played a single round where the Slayer has won. And I'd say, well, that's because I'm just a skilled pro demon, but that just isn't true. Being a demon, while novel for a little while, isn't all that great. You can summon AI help, you can use a command to block resources from the Slayer player, and you have a range of attacks. Some like this fire trap are actually awesome, but even with the added element of between round upgrades, this never feels like something I could see anyone sinking dozens of hours into. And that's mostly because demons like this guy aren't exactly even fun to move around as. I mean, yeah, the weight of a mancubus is really cool for a couple of seconds, but then really quickly you realize, oh wait, I'm running around chasing something. As a character that removes the best part of Doom, its movement suite, with weaponry that isn't quite as precise or enjoyable to use as Doom's traditional weaponry. And I know that this whole play as a demon thing isn't necessarily new either, but for 2 people, Battle Mode really removes what makes Doom Eternal so special and says, hey, try this out. It's not going to be quite as fun, it's not going to be quite as enjoyable, but, you know, it's different. Between the balancing issues, the movement realities of 3 of the 5 demons at your disposal, and the fact that to get the most out of the mode as a demon, you really need to verbally communicate with the other demon, and randoms simply just don't do that, there wasn't a lot of fun for me here. I may be in the minority here, who knows, maybe the public and reviewers will love it, but there are just too many objective flaws for it to be something that commands a real following, at least at launch, in my opinion. Look, no one is buying Doom Eternal for the multiplayer, they're buying it for the campaign. And no one that does that should be disappointed with what they receive. Doom Eternal isn't just good, it's one of the very best games of this gen, one that is 7 years deep. So there's a lot of competition. It's well paced, it's beautiful, and it's a pure nightmarish joy to play. It isn't perfect, but I think its biggest flaw as it stands today is that it ends. I've had that much fun with the game. I will finish with this. Even on normal difficulty, and I play tested 4 of them, Doom Eternal is at times a bit of a challenge. If you want a stress-free, peaceful game to lose yourself in during what are kind of rough times, this probably isn't that. But if you want to relieve some stress, actually feel a bit of accomplishment, play through Doom Eternal. Everyone copes differently. Maybe you just need to kill some demons. Well guys, that is it for today's video. I want to say that I will circle back around to a more fuller, even longer, once I've gotten all the way through it on 2 difficulty settings. I also want to spend a couple more weeks with the multiplayer. Who knows, maybe my opinion will change. I doubt it. But if you enjoyed this video, press the like button down below. If you haven't yet done so, also press subscribe and hit the little bell next to the subscribe button. If you subscribe, that'll make sure you don't miss anything I put out. And if you hit the little bell, that'll make sure you're actually notified when I upload. Both are extremely helpful, so press subscribe and the little bell. Really quickly, I do want to say, now that games are coming out, I'm going to try to focus more on impressions, reviews. News will still come, but I want to make sure you guys get more of these. Today's video was sponsored by Skillshare. Skillshare is trying to make sure 2020 is a year where you can explore new skills, deepen existing passions, and get lost in creativity, as they put it. Skillshare is an online learning community that offers membership with meaning, with so much to do, so much to explore, real projects, and most importantly, the support of people doing the same thing you're doing. And these are classes for real life, things you can actually use, things that fit you. And it's kind of important, especially if you want to be on YouTube. You can take a class like YouTube Success, which is building an authentic channel that's worth the follow. It's taught by Sorella Moore. It's actually really helpful. It's got a lot of good information, even for someone like me that's been doing this for quite a while. It's also incredibly affordable. An annual subscription is less than $10 a month. But the first 500 of you guys to click the link in the description will get 2 free months premium membership, so you can explore it for yourself. I wouldn't tell you guys it was important for me if it wasn't. Skillshare has a lot to offer a creative, a YouTube creator, or anybody doing anything on social media that wants to learn how to grow that business. So yeah, follow the link in the description down below. And right now what you're looking at are 2 more videos for me that I've put out recently, probably over the past week. They may be news, they may be impressions, they may be a review. I don't know what's up there yet. I don't actually decide until after I edit the video. So you can click on either one of those to stay here. And until next time, guys, I'm out.